Hey everybody, in this lesson we're going to be covering how to mitigate anger and reactivity to other people, particularly in relationships. My name's Ty Hicks, founder of mentalhealthcoaching.com. We put these videos and episodes out there for you guys to make sure that you can have the mental health you deserve. And one key thing we're talking about today is relationships, because the quality of your relationships is the quality of your mental health. I used to think that these two were separate subjects. They're not. They're just two different ways of approaching the exact same subject, because people who do not have quality relationships with themselves or with other people have horrible mental health, and vice versa. People who've got very bad mental health tend to have really bad relationships. So as we heal one, the other one heals pretty much automatically. And that's a nice little hack for you. So instead of thinking it as separate issues, you can focus on it as one core discipline. So today's lesson is inspired by a conversation I had with a client recently. She is a really wonderful woman, been dealing with some anxiety issues, been dealing with some anger issues, predominantly towards her husband. And the challenge that she had was her husband had come home, I think from the bar, if I remember correctly, and she could tell that he had had one or two drinks. And so she got really upset with him. And the reason she had got really upset with him is because he had developed a habit in the recent past of getting really drunk. And then, when he would get really drunk, he would say inappropriate things. He would kind of be hurtful. He would just create a bit of a mess, right? And so what had happened was, as he came home one evening, he had had one or two drinks. He was certainly not drunk, but he had just had one or two. But she could smell it on his breath when he came to give her a kiss, if I remember correctly. And she immediately got just as angry as she had a couple of weeks prior when he had gotten really pissed drunk. And so it caused a big argument because, of course, she's angry at him because she doesn't want him to be drunk and, have the type of behavior that he had recently. But he got even more upset because he actually was limiting his drinking, come to find out. Right? He had actually decided deliberately, okay, I'm not going to get drunk. I'm just going to have one or two drinks because I do need to work on my drinking. And so then, that's the intention that he had. And then here it is, he feels blamed. It's almost like creates the sensation of like, okay, well, how the hell do I win? Right? And this is a very common dynamic that will happen in relationships is one partner becomes upset and the other partner's activity, the second partner's activity then becomes limited. So the second partner tries to take control over what they're doing, but then feels blamed anyway. And when they feel blamed anyway, they go, well, shit, I'm going to get blamed anyway, so I might as well just go ahead and get drunk. I might as well just go ahead and hang out with my buddies all weekend or, whatever it is. So what we want to do here is figure out why in the world did my client react the way she did. And if you're having this type of situation where you feel like you're very reactive to other people, I want to help lend a little bit of insight on that. So there are two different frameworks that I kind of use to explain this. What I shared with my client on that session is that she was stacking. So stacking is the key word here. So like for example, imagine if I had, it's not the best metaphor, but it'll work. Imagine if I took one piece of paper, and I gave you a little paper cut, okay? Not gonna be fun. It's definitely gonna be a little painful. But now imagine if I had you relive every single paper cut you have ever had in your entire life right now. So if I gave you a paper cut for every paper cut you have ever had in your life, that's obviously going to be a lot more painful, right? A lot more aggravating. I mean, I think I've probably had at least a couple dozen paper cuts in my life at some point. So the key thing here is what I was explaining to my client is that he was just in that moment at that time, he had had one or two drinks. Like if you would have looked at that particular situation as its own unique separate situation, you wouldn't have reacted the way that you reacted. What I told her is that you stacked it. It's like you took that one piece of paper and instead of just responding to that one piece of paper, you were responding to this whole stack of paper, right? Which becomes a lot more painful. And so she realized that that's exactly what she had done. She had attached all of the pain and all of the meaning from that whole previous stack of experiences. And she had let this tiny little temporary momentary trigger of this one particular experience become a trigger for that whole stack of experiences. And so what we end up doing is we respond to a person in the moment, and we're not responding to a person in the moment for what they've done in the moment. We're responding to a person in the moment and blaming them for all of the pain they've caused us in the past. Even if they have forgiven, or we've forgiven them for it and they've, apologized and all those types of things. So that can become a big problem. So if you are developing a habit of stacking, you want to make sure that you break that habit. Not helpful to you, right? And that's it's a little challenging at first, but the key thing that you want to do, here's a little trick, is you want to separate between the what and the who. So the what in this situation was he had 1 or 2 drinks, as opposed to blaming him as a person, criticizing him. She could have just said, oh, you had 1 or 2 drinks. Is that all you're having this evening? Right? Something of that nature, as opposed to, why do you have to drink so much? So this is one of the key skills that we teach in relationship mastery. It's called honoring your partner's intent, right? Because she did not honor his intent in that moment. She presumed that he had a negative intent, that he was essentially just trying to get pissed drunk and he was going to create all these problems and all that stuff. And so if she would have simply honored his intent and said, hey, I'm sure you have good reasons for having a couple drinks. Do you mind telling me what those might be? Then the relationship could heal, right? That would be a lot easier. So, and then I'm going to give you another different framework, same basic concept, just a different way to look at it. And this is one I've used for years with my couple clients, my clients who are couples, especially. And we call it the museum. So what happens very often is 2 people are talking to each other, like this situation I'll just stick with, right? So he comes home, he drank once or twice, and then all of a sudden, what my client does is she detaches from the present moment. She's no longer really listening to her partner in the present moment and just taking the present moment for what it is. But instead what she does is she goes into the mental museum. So like imagine walking around a museum, right? You've got all these different things on exhibit. You've got different paintings and stuff on the wall. Well, what a lot of times we do is we go through our own mental museum of, hey, remember this time you got really drunk and you screwed that up? And remember 10 years ago when you got really wasted and you were trying to convince me that you were okay to drive? And remember this time over here and this time over here and that time over here? Well, why the hell did you just have 1 or 2 drinks today? Because remember that? Right? And that's what we're doing. We're blaming our partner or the person we're talking to for the museum. We're not really connected with them. We're not really listening to them. We're just in the museum in our head. And we're looking at all of the different exhibits. Now, by the way, we can do this to ourselves too, right? So if we end up making a tiny mistake, it's very common for people to go into the mental museum and they look back through all the exhibits of every single mistake they feel like they've ever made, right? And so that becomes really depressing. That's not fun. That's not good. As opposed to just letting that particular mistake be its own unique event and experience and not connecting it through this little mental daisy chain and saying, look at this, I make mistakes all the time. I'm such an idiot. And making this big, giant, generalized belief about it. If you can focus on the what, like what happened, what mistake did you make? What lesson do you need to learn from it, etc. As opposed to blaming the who, right? Well, why am I such an idiot? Right? That type of thing. Then that will help you. Okay? So I hope that that's useful to you. The trick, of course, is staying in the present moment and trying to not criticize yourself as a person or criticizing the other person. Like, don't make an attribution about someone's character or intention. Instead, just take that particular isolated event as its own isolated event. And, you can deal with it and work with it and figure out what the lesson is, and it'll work a lot better for you. So I hope this is useful to you. As always, we love to see the comments and questions. And if you ever feel like you need a little more additional help, of course, reach out to us at any time at mentalhealthcoaching.com. And we're happy to help you. Okay. But thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope this is useful, and I'll be excited to see you soon. Bye.